Wall Street, the Wolf of Wall Street, billions, industry. This is the list of names I'm considering for my firstborn son. But they're also the names of famous films and television programs who depict the high-flying world of finance as one filled with coke-snuffing sleazebags who absolutely love they drugs. But is the culture of Wall Street really this awesome and nose forward? Let's find out. To begin my investigation, I got word that for the right price, you can purchase the private journals of the very people working on Wall Street. And while I was surprised how easy it was to gain access to such a trove of information, I was at a loss for where to start. But sometimes the best path forward is the one right in front of you. Now I had a name with plenty of vowels. All I had to do was butter him up with charm.
I'm Alex Saidi. I'm a reporter with the Wall Street Journal, and I cover finance, banking, and Wall Street.
Those are my three favorite words.
They're three pretty sexy topics, I would say.
The man was clearly comfortable enough with me to proposition sex this early in the conversation.
They're three pretty sexy topics, I would say.
I have that effect on people. But we couldn't move on to something so unprofessional so soon. We need to talk about drugs.
Let's talk about drugs.
Let's talk about drugs.
Do people in finance actually do drugs anymore?
Absolutely. They're just maybe not the drugs you think they might be doing.
You think I'm wrong?
I think you could be wrong.
If I watch an old finance movie, right?
Yep.
I'm seeing a guy in a pinstripe suit doing blow off of a stripper.
Right.
Is that what's happening nowadays?
No, not these days. You know, there's definitely been a cultural shift in the types of drugs used at the office. I think outside of work, people are still partying just like they are in any industry. And I think Wall Street in particular does attract risk takers and also clout chasers. And I think cocaine lends itself well to both of those types of people. But in terms of performance enhancing drugs used to help people do their jobs better, Adderall, Zyn, caffeine at high concentrations, those are the drugs you see being abused a lot more. And particularly with Adderall, you know, Adderall is amphetamine. It's a very serious drug that people get super addicted to. The trading floors of the 80s was a really social business. You know, you were on the phone all the time. Trading floors were like raucous playgrounds, essentially. Now trading floors are really quiet. It's mostly guys like typing on their like laptops and like major monitor setups.
Admittedly, the picture Alex painted was a bleak one. If you saw that painting in a museum, you'd say, that painting sucks. But I did have my concerns about Alex. After all, he's merely reporting on Wall Street. I could only trust him as far as I'd pay him to throw me. So I got in touch with a few fine folks who work in finance today, and I asked them to confirm whether Alex's bleak picture of the industry's current drug culture was correct. To protect the longevity of their careers in this episode about doing drugs at work, I conducted the interviews whilst I was inside the Good Work Anonymous reporting portal.
Nah, everyone's locked in, dude. We're all robots. Legit. We're all fucking robots. We're already the AI agents, my dude. Like, legit. I think more people lean towards doing, say, Adderall than cocaine in this day and age. And, like, you can get that prescribed through Tier 1 health insurance that you're for your firm quite easily. I'm sure any tech or finance bro will tell you how easy it is to get an Adderall prescription through their health insurance.
Do you find that working in finance necessitates some type of stimulant?
Well, the thing is, Dan, that it's like running shoes. You know, you don't need shoes to run, but they certainly do help a lot.
The new finance drug of choice, it would be like extreme Zins. Like I'm talking about like 9s, maybe like some European 10s. I mean, people were popping that like it was chewing gum.
Now, quick point of clarification here for anybody feeling lost. In this context, European 10s refers to high-dose variations of Zyn nicotine packets. In basically any other context, European 10s refers to hot-ass people from Europe. And by that, I mean the following. I'm talking about 7-foot Dutch elvish baddies, weathered day laborers from Minsk, all of Dua Lipa's Albanian cousins, my Airbnb host Milo from Brussels, who I am still very much in love with, Stregonona, genderless, heavily pierced East Berliners, the coastal French, the urban French, the rural French, Copenhagen baristas, Ronaldo, jaded Norwegian professors, and when the light is right and I've had a few stiff drinks, the toads they got croaking over in Cardiff, Wales. And also my Portuguese au pair from when I was little growing up. Guys, this will be on the test, okay? Okay, great. Folks, you've been putting it off for too long. Don't act cute with me. You know what I'm talking about. Your doctor's appointments. You don't want to deal with the logistics, you just don't feel like it, or you're like me and you're absolutely terrified of calling another adult on the telephone, especially if they're a doctor. Do you think I want to know what that glowing orb I have growing out of my tailbone is? Yes. But do I want to get on the telephone about it? No. Look, it's scary out there, but your body is a temple. I mean, just look at you. Which is why it should get the care it deserves when it deserves it. Which is why we have ZocDoc, today's video sponsor. ZocDoc lets you search and compare local in-network doctors with more than 150,000 providers within 200 plus specialties across all 50 states. Count them. Plus, their website has reviews from real patients and detailed doctor profiles to help you choose the right one. So no more crying next to your landline trying to work up the courage to call the doctor's office. Nope, you can see actual appointment openings and click to instantly book a visit. And most appointments happen within 24 to 72 hours, with some even happening the same day. Best of all, ZocDoc is free to use. That's the best price they got out there. That's right, everybody. Taking care of your health just got easier. So head on over to ZocDoc.com/goodwork, link down in the description to get started. I know it may seem itsy bitsy teeny weeny, but just clicking on the link in the description is a huge step towards prioritizing your health. Thanks so much to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video and helping us all take better care of our health. Clink. Now, where were we?
The perception is definitely not the reality. It's way more depressing. I mean, you're still working the same long hours that you see in the movies, but it's mostly off of like energy drinks and nicotine. The amount of people I saw and even interacted with that were hopped up on some kind of stimulant was a lot. Not so much with more the harder substances at work, but outside of it, that's a different story.
And most of the preconceived ideas that we get from work in finance come from media. Like, you know, if you look at the movie like Wall Street, you know, with Gordon Gekko or American Psycho, or even The Wolf of Wall Street, they all come from the pre-2008 time. And even when you work in finance and, you know, these days, you will hear about people that used to work there before then, right? Like, you will hear all of these crazy stories.
Through all my conversations with the folks in and around the world of finance, people were constantly referencing these stories of the glory days of previous generations. But it was clear that in order to get an accurate depiction of the relationship between drugs and finance back in the day, I needed to speak to an old-timer in the heart and flesh. Someone who partied hardy and lived to tell the tale. Someone who, I don't know.
I got flown down in a helicopter to Atlantic City. I got my key to my suite, and so I like check in and I go into my room, and on the coffee table is my name in cursive written with cocaine. So Turney Duff is written, and I'm just like, God damn it, why did my parents name me Alexander Hamilton?
Turney Duff was a hedge fund trader in the 90s and 2000s. In 2013, he wrote a spectacular memoir of his time in finance called The Buy Side, after which he served as a consultant on billions.
We used to call it playing through. So like, you basically don't go home, or you just change your suit and you never go to bed. My longest streak was 3 days, which like...
Three days no sleep.
Yeah. I woke up Wednesday morning and didn't go to bed until Saturday.
Turney told me that his partying on Wall Street began because his hedge fund job on the buy side lent itself to having a lot of brokers looking to entertain him, hoping to entice him to invest through their desk. And entertaining turned out to be something that Turney was totally baller at.
During the day, you know, sitting next to a guy from Harvard, a woman from Duke, and I had no shot. And what I figured out was, at happy hour, I could crush the guy from Harvard, I could crush the woman from Duke. And so when the office lights went out and the city lights came on, like, that was my time to shine.
I'm thinking of the people that you worked with that were the Harvards and Dukes, but they didn't socialize. Was them not doing drugs almost an impediment on their career at all? Or
Partly, yeah. You know, I would be on a private jet with, 15 to 20 people doing lines and, partying our asses off. And, when I got back that weekend, any trades that I had were given to the people who were on that plane. You develop these sort of like drug-fueled relationships that grow together. So in that sense, it helped my career, but it didn't make me like a better trader or more focused or anything like that. Think about it like this. So I'm 32 years old, founded a hedge fund called Argus Partners. We get it up to about $1.4 billion. I'm trading about $50 million a year in commissions, okay? So there's 15, 20, 30 brokers on Wall Street who all want a piece of that $50 million. Let's say you're covering me, right? What are you gonna do to get $2 or $3 million of my business? Pretty much anything I want. At the time, I was like 31, 32 years old, but I would get paired up with single guys who knew how to party between like 25 and 30 years old and who would like get after it. So they knew exactly who to cover my account because they knew who I was, right?
did you find that the socializing element of Wall Street was starting to go down by the time that you left it? Or is it still just as much of a part of the job?
Going into the financial collapse, it definitely felt like it was going in the wrong direction.
And look, people have been doing drugs with each other to facilitate business deals since the dawn of man. How else do you explain this cave painting of clients rolling face at an Usher concert? But unfortunately, a few spoil sports in 2008 came around and ruined that for everyone. After the global financial crisis, financiers faced a lot more scrutiny over how they were handling their business.
Now you have an industry where like risk-taking has been pushed a little bit to the margins. And then in the center, the banks, these are highly regulated institutions. Compliance and risk are like up everyone's asses all the time.
Pre-financial collapse, compliance would come out to the trading desk and they'd be like, Turney, excuse me, I'd be like, beat it! I'm making money, get out of here, right?
Right.
After the financial collapse, complete shift. Compliance now has more power than anyone else. And I remember I was out in the Hamptons, this is after I left the business, and I was talking to a guy, he was at a huge asset manager, I don't want to name the name, but I was talking to him, he's the head of the desk, and we were talking kind of like entertainment and whatnot, and he was like, oh, well, I have to pay my own way if I go to dinner with a broker. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, really? And he was like, yes. He's like, it's not worth it. Like, there are a lot of brokers now who just like put an end to the whole entertainment business.
If you read stories of like traders in the 80s, most of these guys didn't go to college. They were just really social animals that knew how to like buy and sell and capture a spread in between. Today, that's unthinkable. The computers are almost doing like half of the analysis that goes into like a big trading operation these days. And I think what you see as a consequence of that is much more nerdy, introverted people are attracted to the industry now.
Granted, as a financial journalist, I'll admit that hearing about the greater scrutiny being placed on large investment institutions simply warms the cockles of my heart. And the heartles of my cock. However, as a guy who also loves him some hot drama, I gotta admit that this new era of Wall Street sounds a lot less sexy and maybe even more intense with this new era of drugs. A generation that's traded snorting coke while listening to Whitesnake for taking Adderall while listening to a 2-hour productivity playlist.
I think for a lot of people, it's just a way to keep going. Finance has a lot of long hours, whether you're working on the retail or more institutional side. You're gonna be put through the ringer, and it's just a cheap, easy way to keep going.
Any 100-hour work week type schedule that requires you to lock in, especially on a computer screen, you're probably going to be using some type of stimulant.
It's so obvious that there has become a culture of you can just go to a doctor who will write you a script. He doesn't take insurance. So it's kind of like a cottage industry where you just like get a script for a check. Individual bosses will know when there are problems on their teams. I've spoken to some of them, and they will tell their employees, like, you don't need to take drugs to do this job. If you feel like you have to, come and talk to me. I don't think at an institutional level, though, the banks in particular have done anything coordinated to stop it. They know it's happening. What they've tried to do is really like make the work situation better, cap the hours that they work at 80 a week, with exceptions, which are often employed.
Well, I was going to say, do people end up following those?
No.
Because it's a
No,
good,
they
I'm sure
don't.
it's a good PR move to say, hey, we're capping work at 80 hours a week.
But with a huge asterisk being like, except when there's like live deals or things that we deem to be critical to the business, which is everything at all times. But I'm happy to use this show as a way to tell the world that these caps that the banks have announced in our pages aren't enforced and aren't taken seriously by the people who actually run the banks. It's been over 2 years now since some of these new caps were announced in the wake of an actual tragedy at Bank of America.
The tragedy that Alex refers to is that of Leo Lucanis, an Army veteran and former investment banker at Bank of America who clocked in multiple 100-hour work weeks finalizing an acquisition before dying of a blood clot that formed in his coronary artery, spurring a call out for the largest investment banks to reevaluate the schedules of their most tasked employees.
In the wake of that, many banks came forward and were like, we're gonna focus on work-life balance and restructure things and not have people work so much. But you talk to people on the ground and they're like, yeah, nobody takes it seriously. Because that's what human resources is saying. But human resources is not the one assigning me work. And people who are at the top now of the pyramid in the banks came up in a culture where you were just worked hard and there were no questions asked. And it's arguably even worse now because working from home is possible. So at least in the past, okay, I'm at the office till 1 or 2. I go home and I don't start till I go back. Now you can go home at 8 or 9, but be working till 5. And again, these are the environments where Adderall abuse, heavy Zyn usage, energy drink consumption, it can, just cause that to really, really fester in a bad way.
Couldn't agree more, Alex. And might I add that I've never seen anything fester in a good way either. Indeed, we live in an age where the reality of finance is, in some ways, much more mature than the image we get from those movies where you see a guy destroy a mountain of POW while spitting on a stripper he paid to mud wrestle a pygmy rhino. Yet some constants remain. While the stimulants have certainly changed, the degree of necessity for them hasn't. Brought about by a new era of strict, analytical, performance-driven work culture that doesn't appear to be going anywhere anytime soon, despite what the companies themselves may say. Because the most prevalent addiction in finance might not be any drug at all. It might be the work itself. Or the money. Probably the money. And for good work, I'm Dan Toomey.
Is there anything we haven't, guys, anything else?
Well, I think we should at least mention, I went to rehab twice and I'm now 16 and a half years sober, right? There was a huge price that I paid for my behavior and it's a slippery slope. But through 12-step programs, therapy, a strong network, and just doing the work, I was able to kind of string some time together.
Again, just to reiterate the point, when you take Adderall and you don't have ADHD, you're just doing it to have more energy, work a little bit harder. Those types of people will wind up with worse impacts on their psychology because you're taking a heavy upper when your brain doesn't actually need to go up that much. For people who are thinking about, should I maybe just get an Adderall prescription so I can do a little bit better at work? There are real serious impacts to it. You should consult with a legitimate doctor.
And if you need a doctor's number, I know a great one who will give you anything on the Upper West Side.